It feels almost impossible to express all the gifts and strengths Mrs. Menaka Desikachar possesses and shares with the world, and how she has positively impacted so many students. I have been lucky enough to know Mrs. Menaka for over 30 years, and I have observed her in many roles: as a wife, as a mother and grandmother, as a student herself, and most notably as an incredibly skilled yoga teacher and yoga therapist. She is one of the finest yoga therapists I have ever witnessed, and I have been so lucky to have learned from her. For many years, I shadowed her as she worked with students coming for personalized yoga practices to treat everything from insomnia and depression, anxiety, and a range of physical injuries. Her observation skills are unmatched as she notices subtle changes and asymmetries in the body that others miss. And she designs personalized practices with skilled nuance based on her years of experience in order to address and support the needs of the whole person. As a master teacher of the ancient texts and of Vedic chanting, Mrs. Menaka Desikachar is patient and also rigorous, making corrections so that her students are the very best they can be. Perhaps most importantly, Mrs. Menaka is greatly skilled at connecting with each of her students in a meaningful way, so that the practices she designs and the lessons she imparts continue to support her students long after the physical interaction between teacher and student has ended. Mrs. Menaka possesses many qualities that make her such a gifted teacher. She is incredibly clear, she's compassionate and kind. She is a devoted student and practitioner herself for so many years, making her the ideal acharya. But I'm going to propose another reason for her great success as a teacher. In addition to the many roles in her life she excels at, she is also a master gardener. She is able to make anything grow under even the harshest of conditions, from vegetables and fruits to beautiful varieties of bright flowers and plants. And it is this great love of gardening, which I believe contributes to why she is such a gifted teacher. She tends to and she nurtures her students just as she cares for her beautiful garden, with attention and loving care, without smothering, but most importantly, trusting the process and allowing for her students to grow and blossom in their own unique way, in their own time. Just as she does not expect the flowers, plants, and vegetables in her garden to all grow in the same way, she appreciates and supports her students as unique individuals. And with the right water, light, and nourishment, she trusts them to grow into their best self under her loving guidance. I'm so grateful for Mrs. Menaka Desikachar, for she has changed my life for the better in more ways than I can count. And it is a true privilege and an honor to know her and study with her. Thank you.
Namaste. My name is Linda. I'm a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist, and a Vedic chanting teacher practicing in New Zealand. I am a student of Mrs. Menaka Desikachar, and I would like to begin by saying I'm so pleased that she's been honored by the Indian Yoga Association. She richly deserves this recognition. And I'm also very happy to contribute a few words about the great privilege it is to be her student. I first met Mrs. Menaka Desikachar in 2011 when she was co-teaching a seminar in Melbourne, which I attended with a few of my colleagues from New Zealand. And although I had learned a little bit of Vedic chanting in my teacher training and some seminars here in New Zealand, it was the first time I attended a dedicated weekend workshop to Vedic chanting. So I was a little nervous and I wasn't quite sure what we would be asked to do. But as soon as I saw Madam in front of the classroom, I felt somewhat more relaxed because she was sharing a joke with her co-presenter, and she seemed very relaxed and very much herself. So that was a lovely beginning. I could see that she had a sense of humor and a spark, and the weekend went really well. We learned the Gayatri mantra with various different versions and aspects. And I looked at the chant and thought, goodness, that's a long chant we're going to learn as beginners, but she helped to guide us through it. And we all ended the weekend feeling that we had really accomplished a few good steps towards learning Vedic chanting. It was also the first time that I had a private lesson with Madam. And I smile when I think about this because when she asked me, what would I like to learn? I named a chant which I loved listening to, which I later realized was actually well beyond my capacity at the time. But she didn't say, that's too hard for you right now. She just smiled and suggested a much simpler chant, which we began with, which was Lagunyasa. And I remember learning that chant, and every time I chant that chant, it takes me back to that very first weekend of my Vedic chanting journey. Over time, I also interacted with Mrs. Desikachar in various classes during yoga therapy training in Chennai. And these classes were very enjoyable and were partly the reason why I became more and more interested in learning Vedic chanting. But also while I was in Chennai studying yoga therapy, I had the opportunity to sit with Mrs. Desikachar in the room when she was doing one-on-one consultations with yoga therapy clients. And that was very interesting as well to observe, because she had a beautiful way of being very present with the client, whilst at the same time mentoring the yoga therapist that she was training, and also acknowledging the fact that I was in the room as an observer, which was part of my training. So she held that space beautifully for all of us. And I also felt that in spite of the fact that we were in the room, the client that she was seeing felt very much like she was there for them. And the interactions were beautiful. I could really see and experience that heartfelt connection that she created between herself and the client. And that was good learning for me as well. And at the end of the yoga therapy training, because of my exposure to Vedic chanting over the years, and because of my my growing connection with Madam, I signed up for the Vedic chanting teacher training, and consequently also the advanced chanting teacher training. And over the years, I've just been more and more impressed with how much she can carry a group of people through the lessons while attending to everybody's needs, and still and still managing to work through the curriculum, which can be quite challenging when you have a group of very diverse people from different parts of the world who come to Vedic chanting and the Sanskrit language from their own background, their own culture, and yet everyone finds it very easy to connect with Madam and to learn from her. And the other thing that I really admire about her is her adaptability. During the COVID years, when we were having to switch from in-person classes to learning via Skype or Zoom, even though I'm sure that must have been a difficult transition for her, she did it with humor and seemingly effortlessly adapting to the new ways in which we had to learn and teach. So I think that adaptability is really admirable as well. And of course, apart from all the lessons we've learned and all of the chants that we have learned, and all of the aspects of the yoga philosophy that go along with those chants. The thing that I really have learned from Mrs. Desikachar is the way that she lives her yoga and the way that she brings herself to every interaction, but she remains within herself, and her capacity to practice Ishvara Pranidhana, to be able to surrender to whatever is going on and still be true to the teachings and still be there available for her students, is really a wonderful teaching, wonderful lesson for me. And I really appreciate that. I also find that connecting with her on a personal level is very easy for me. At the beginning of every lesson, she asks me about my family, my parents, how things are with me, so that we make that connection before we engage in the teachings and the lessons. And so I do always feel seen by her, which I also really appreciate. So I feel very grateful that I have been able to learn so much from her. I love my one-to-one lessons. I also enjoy being in class with my colleagues, so that I can also experience how she interacts with other people. And I love being her student. What can I say? So again, I'm really engaged in honoring Mrs. Menaka Desikachar for her great contribution to yoga and to the teachings and to carrying on the tradition that she represents. She has a great deal of respect for the tradition, the teachers that have gone before her, and she remains absolutely and beautifully who she is in her way of teaching. Namaste. Thank you so much for teaching me.
Hello. My name is Naoko Watabe. I am Japanese and I met this tradition back in 2004, so it has been almost 20 years. And I started learning with Menaka Madam since 2015. And it was the time that she was going to teach this Vedic chanting teacher training for the first time to her students. So I was so excited to learn from Menaka Madam because until that point, I never met her personally. I saw only her in distance and feeling like, oh. And then, so it was like, I can finally learn directly from this person. I was thinking this way. But when I take teacher training, she was always very down to earth and she never put herself up on a pedestal. She will always communicate very honestly. Things she knows, she teaches it very clear. Things she doesn't know, she will say she doesn't know. And that's very clear. She never pretends anything. And now I take advanced Vedic chanting training course with her. 2 years. I'm in the last module right now, and tomorrow is our examination, so I'm like nervous at this point. But one of her very strong feature is she is very stable as a teacher. Whenever I come to a class, she's always focused on the teaching and she never judges you personally. She will say things that I cannot do and say, no, this is not correct. And she always encourages you to go forward. And so one incident is that during the Corona time, I was lost. Like I couldn't find purpose in teaching. Also, I couldn't find the reason why I am chanting because I'm Japanese and all these questions coming in life. And I couldn't take lessons with her for maybe half a year or so. And finally, I reserved a private session with her with the fear. and I came in front of the class, Zoom, and she asked why you didn't take a lesson, and usually she never step into your lives. She always focuses on the learning, and whatever the students needs, she will communicate, even her personal stories, life stories, so that the students can be encouraged. But that time was the first time that she said, why you're not doing this? And so I explained to her, I'm this and that, and I'm lost. And she simply said, now, you are already teaching, you have students. And so what are you going to teach if you're not learning anything? And that hit me. It's a very simple matter of fact. It's not a difficult life question. It is a true, I am teaching and the students are following me. And she said, your chanting skills are going down. So you have to practice. You have to keep chanting. And that moment put me a fire in myself. And something changed me. And slowly, I taking classes with her continuously. And that's why today I am taking this advanced Vedic chanting, still chanting. So she's the big reason why I can keep chanting today, even in this long, difficult chants. Because at this point, with this long chants, you can't learn meanings logically. You have to feel it. And so the teacher is very important person because she embodies the teaching itself. And through her, we learn the purity. We learn the meaning of stability. Also, through her, we get to see how the divine works. In Bhusuktam, we learn the meaning that when your fire, life energy, goes out, whatever the reason is, you ask all these gods, also Bhuma, to bring that energy back into ourselves so we can keep going, keep striving. So through her, through Menaka Madam's words and passion and compassion and encouragement, my fire bring me back. And I have a little bit more courage, a little bit more energy to go forward. And that's why I can keep chanting. And through her passion in the teaching and the faith in the teaching brings each student fire. And that fire is keep living. So it goes on and on and on. So through her relationship, I can see why this teaching lives thousands of years through the people. Even if one person is gone back to the source, the fire is living to next person. So I am very grateful that I have a chance to learn from Menaka Madam herself, because through the sound of the chanting, we get to receive the essence of her being. And that being we can't learn logically. We can only receive by transmitting the vibration of live being. And that is why I think it's very important whom you will learn from, because that essence will come to you. And so her being of pure being, joyous being, and very passionate and very faithful about the teaching. We all ask students, or the students will say the same thing, because we all see the same quality. So I am really very grateful that I get to receive all these great treasures of life. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Namaste. I would like to take the opportunity to share with you how much the long-term relationship I share with the fantastic teacher, which is Menaka Madam, since 20 years, has enlightened my life so far. Everything began in 2006 when I had the opportunity to study the second chapter of Yoga Sutra with her. We were sitting together looking at each other's eyes. It's quite an intense experience, and I was trying to take as many notes as possible. Since today, these notes are very relevant, even though I was such a beginner at this time. It's a very intense experience, but very humbling experience to study with Madame. And she's very humble, she's very, I would say, she can make you feel comfortable. Actually, I was a bit scared when I studied with her the first time, because in the KHYF, which is her baby, all the teachers were so afraid of Menaka Madame. When she was coming, they were also, every of them were so scared. But she doesn't make you feel like that. Because she's herself, she's not hiding somewhere. You also feel that you can be yourself in the presence of Madame. In 2016, I began a chanting training in Chennai and an advanced chanting training as well with Madame. And in the beginning, I was very arrogant because I thought that I could chant very well. But very nicely, she showed me how much I could improve my chanting. And not only by chanting rightly the words as they should be, like the tongue should be like this or like that, Philip, put your tongue here or there, but also because she gives you the right attitude to chant. You have to chant from the heart, and so that you can feel the energy of the chant, which is actually what we are looking for. And she's doing it even though she has one problem with the hair. She cannot hear from one here, and still for Vedic chanting she can hear actually everything, so it's really fantastic. But the most significant experience I had with Madame that I would like to share is in 2015 or 2016, when Chennai was undergoing a very, very dramatic flood. I was stuck in my apartment with no food. I had just a little bit of rice and chocolate, and after 5 days I decided to get out of my apartment to reach them. So after 1 hour of walking in this very dirty and muddy water, I arrived in their home. And when Kostuba, our son, my teacher, helped me to clean myself from this mud, Madame was already cooking some food for me. And I can tell you that food was very precious at this moment, because everybody was getting out of food. But still she did share this meal with me with such an open heart and without even questioning it. So I could have my first meal since 5 days from Madame, and I remember how touching this was. The last thing I would like to share with Madame is that she's always so humble. When we travel together and when we are together, she will never speak too much. She will never interfere with what we do or what we say, because she wants to respect our path. But actually, she's inspiring our path by showing how humble she is. And it's very amazing to see that when you have so much knowledge, and when you are the most senior teacher and student in this tradition, because she has studied with Sri T.K.V. Desikachar for so many decades, and she studied every day with him, that still you can be so knowledgeable and so humble in the same time. I really appreciate so much when we are together and sometimes we share a meal. She doesn't treat me like a Westerner. She treats me like an Indian. And for me, it's really getting very deep in my heart. So I want to thank Madame for all she gave me and all she gave to others in the field of yoga, because she's also leading some of our Belgian students here, and they are improving so much when they are studying with her, actually. So I wish Madame still very long path of sharing and teaching, and I want to thank her from the deep of my heart for what she gave me. Thank you.
Namaste. My name is Seung-hee Cha. I live in Korea. For the past years, I have been learning Vedic chanting from Madame Menaka. She is a living, intensive cultural asset in Vedic chanting. As the oldest teacher in the Vinyoga tradition, her endless passion and patience in guiding her students are truly admirable. Our beloved teacher is an incredible and inspiring role model for women in yoga around the world.